Good morning. We're so glad that you're with us today, whether you're watching online or participating here in person. I don't know what your relationship with faith communities has been like in the past, but you are truly welcome here. And we invite you, no matter who you are, to be part of our mission of learning to live a life of love. You'll find this whole service archived on our Facebook page, so you can enjoy it at any time. You can share it with your friends. You will find our sermons archived on the website. And if you'd like to get on our email distribution list, just reach out to us through the website. Every moment of life is special. Learning that is learning one of the secrets to happiness. And at the same time, there are some moments of life that are especially meaningful. I think of the first date I had with Kendra. I think of our wedding date. I think of the day when our children, Jordan and Jacob, were born. I think of the day they graduated from high school. I think of the day of my very first sermon. I think of the day I signed my first contract to write a book for a publisher. And the list could go on and on. I'm sure that most of you have those moments in life that are especially meaningful. The same thing is true when it comes to Jesus. Every moment of his life is so special. And there are moments that seem especially infused with meaning and significance. This is true when it comes to what we call Passion Week or Holy Week, those last days of Jesus' life here on earth. There are 4 books or gospels that record the life of Jesus. About 1/3 of those gospels is devoted to this Holy Week, this Passion Week. Those last 7 days were so vital to understanding who Jesus is that the gospel authors devoted a significant portion of the writing to that time. And so for the next 8 weeks, on Sunday morning, we're going to explore this Holy Week, this Passion Week, and all of its implications for our lives. On Sunday mornings in this series called Relentless, we'll use the Gospel of John, beginning in chapter 12 and going all the way through the end as we look at his particular view of this Passion Week. During our adult Sunday class that meets just before worship, in a series called Be Brave, we'll use scripture and other resources to take a deep look at this Passion Week. And in a new series that begins this Wednesday called Core Strength, we'll be looking at what have been called the 7 deadly sins and the way in which the last days of Jesus inspire us to holy living. Our text this morning carries one of the most significant summaries of the life of Jesus. Verse 1 in chapter 13 of John again. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. John begins the end of his story here in John chapter 12, and he uses this pregnant phrase of Jesus. He loved them to the end. The Greek word translated end is the word telos. Everybody say telos. And this Greek word telos can mean at least 3 things. Let's look briefly at each of these 3 and what they tell us about Jesus and what they tell us about ourselves. First, we could read this text in this way: Jesus loved them to the telos, or time. The word telos can mean time. And read in that way, John is saying that Jesus' love had no time limits. Jesus didn't come to 5 o'clock every day and say, well, that's it. There's no more love left to do. I can just go home. No, Jesus loved to the end of time. There was no second, no minute, no hour on the clock when Jesus wasn't loving. Love was always on the clock. Read in this way, this is John's commentary on the duration of Jesus' love. Jesus' love was long-lasting. There was never a time when it stopped. We might think of a scene like the one recorded in Mark chapter 1. Jesus has been busy doing loving things for many people, and now the sun begins to set, but there are still so many people in need of his love. And so Jesus continues on, even past sunset. Mark chapter 1, beginning in verse 32. That evening after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. The whole town gathered at the door to watch. So Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, and he cast out many demons. Even after the sun sets, Jesus continues to love. This doesn't mean Jesus didn't take care of himself. Jesus understood how to love himself while he was also loving others. But what Mark is showing, what John is telling, is that Jesus loved to the end. There was no end to his love. He loved until the end of time. Even there on the cross, in those final moments, Jesus extends love to this criminal, guilty of a crime. And yet, in spite of that, Jesus extends his love to him. And so we might ask ourselves this question: what time am I least likely to love? I believe there are times when we are less likely to love. Times during a day, or days during the week, or seasons in life when we are less likely to love. Does love go with you when you go on vacation? Does love commute with you to work? Is love around when no one else is around? Sometimes love struggles to be with us when we're loving those who are difficult. Does your love endure when a child acts out one too many times? Does your love endure when a spouse says something that hurts your feelings? Does your love endure when a parent says something that cuts you? Often we struggle to have this enduring love in times of suffering. I know that when I encounter someone who's suffering, I'm quick to write a text or to offer some service or some assistance. And yet after a day or two or three, I move on to something else. My love rarely endures as long as the suffering of the person before me. But Jesus loved to the end. Barry Corey, president of Biola University, sent this letter to alumni after the murder of George Floyd. In this letter, he described love as a long road. We need to acknowledge it's a long road that takes tireless perseverance. History has shown that this road has too many rest stops, exit ramps, and U-turns. Too often we accelerate with each shocking injustice and then decelerate or merely inch forward when the headline fades. Too often, tragically, we stop altogether or even go the other direction. We need to travel the long road at a pace that does not let up and in a direction that is not rerouted. A long road, a tireless perseverance, a pace that does not let up. That's what it means to love to the end. Jesus loved to the end of time, and his example calls us to do the same. Second, we could read this text in this way: Jesus loved them to the telos, meaning type. The word telos can mean not only time, it can also mean type. And read in this way, John is saying that Jesus' love had no type limits. There was no type of person whom Jesus did not love. And so this is John's commentary on the degree of Jesus' love. After all, just look at the disciples of Jesus, whom Jesus is with as he's giving this teaching and doing these actions. These were terribly imperfect men who would go on later in this Holy Week to abandon Jesus, to betray Jesus. And yet here he loves them to the end. Jesus taught his followers to have this same degree of love when he said things like this in Matthew chapter 5, beginning verse 43. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. In Jesus' day, people loved to limit their love. They were okay with loving their neighbor as long as they got to define who their neighbor was. They felt like they were free to pick and choose who they loved and who they loathed. But Jesus loved to the end. And that's what got him in so much trouble, isn't it? There was a woman from Samaria in John chapter 4. Jesus shows kindness and compassion to her, and people are shocked because of her gender, because of her ethnicity, because of her past. Children come to Jesus, the disciples shoo them away, and yet Jesus loves them. There was no type of person whom Jesus didn't love. And so we might ask ourselves, what type am I least likely to love? As you consider the degree of your love, how does it measure up with Jesus? Do you love people who are primarily just like you, and not so much those who are very different from you? In her book, The Unwinding of the Miracle, Julie Yip Williams recounts the limits of love in her own family of origin. Julie was born poor in Vietnam. She was born blind. And when her grandmother learned of her birth, that grandmother urged Julie's parents to kill her. The grandmother made an appointment for them with an herbalist who could give Julie something to drink so that she would sleep and die. Because in that culture at that time, if you were a woman who had no potential of marrying a man, if you had some kind of disability, if you had no resources, you weren't worth living. You weren't worth loving. There were limits to the type of person who should be loved. Now, some of us struggle with this at a very personal level because we feel like we are the type of person unworthy of love. And yet, if you could line up every type of person who has ever existed in the history of the human race and include yourself in that lineup, you would find Jesus loving every one. He loved to the end. And he calls us to do the same. And then third, we could read this text in this way. Jesus loved them to the telos, meaning terminus. The word telos not only means time, it not only means type, it means terminus. It's John's commentary on the destination of Jesus' love. Jesus loved to the end, that is, to the completion of a journey that ended in love. If you could picture Jesus' life as a journey, the goal of that journey, the destination of that journey, the terminus of that journey was love. Love was the destination of Jesus' entire journey. And if anything pushed him closer to that terminus, closer to that destination, he was all in, no matter what it cost. But if anything distracted him from that destination, he refused, no matter the cost. And this is so important, because for so many Christians today, love is not our destination. Love is not the goal that we're pointed toward. Love is not the terminus we're marching for. And so we might ask ourselves this question: what terminus am I least likely to target? And if the answer is love, then we have missed the point. if the terminus or destination that we're aiming for in life is anything other than love, we don't understand who Jesus is and what it means to follow him. Several years ago, a flight at Brazil's Moraba Airport was preparing for takeoff. It was headed to Belém, a 48-minute flight. But the captain of that aircraft put in the wrong number into the computer flight system. And so when they took off, the plane didn't head toward Belém, it headed deep into the Amazon jungle. 50 minutes into the flight, the crew inquired. They asked the captain what was going on because they didn't see the Belém airport anywhere beneath them. And the captain lied and told them that there was something wrong with the airport at Belém and they were just flying to another airport. He told them to give the passengers more alcohol to drink. The crew pressed him and he brushed them off. About an hour later, that flight crash landed into the jungle, killing 13 people. When we had the wrong destination in mind, when we've made an error in the terminus toward which we are heading, the results can be deadly. Jesus spent his entire life headed in only one direction, the direction of love. And because of that, you and I, and every human who has ever existed, have been deeply blessed. I want to close by asking you to reflect on these questions. What does it mean for me to love to the end? When it comes to time, how about you finish this statement? By engaging in this one practice, I can extend the duration of my love this week. Or when it comes to type, how would you complete this sentence? By caring for this one person or this one group, I can expand the degree of my love this week. Or when it comes to terminus, how would you finish this statement? By refocusing my priorities in this one way, I can make love the true destination of my life this week. In this Passion Week, one of the things that John wants us to know is that Jesus loved to the end. Embrace that love and reflect that love to the world around you.